Yeah, since I prefer to paint flowers, or I'm really drawn to painting flowers, I decided to take a look at what different flowers mean. And one of the things that really struck me about Oliver Comstock was his compassion. And so I started doing some research online as to what flowers represent compassion, and I found that the peony oftentimes represents compassion. And of course, peonies aren't in season right now, but one of the local florists ordered some for me, and they just came in yesterday. Yeah, I'm really pleased with these. They're very interesting shapes, interesting texture. They smell really, really wonderful. So I think I'll probably get some really good pictures. So I like to do my reference photographs out in the sun so I can get some nice shadows and sort of sun coming through the petals. So we'll go out and see outside and see what we can do. What I typically do is I'll take a number of reference photos, and sometimes I'll pick a particular photo to work from. Sometimes I'll use a conglomeration of photos. And I told my husband when I started doing these paintings of the flowers that I do, I told him that, we're so busy as a society that forget stopping to smell the roses. I mean, we don't even notice that there's a rose bush there. So hopefully this helps people to take the time to really stop and look a little bit more closely. And that's probably the nicest compliment I've ever gotten from people is when they say after seeing my paintings that they've never looked at a flower the same way again. And that makes me feel really good. All right, so I really wanted, from the florist, I was really hoping for a variety of peony that's called Festiva Maxima, because it has, in addition to the white petals, it has little patches of almost a scarlet red. And I really felt that that particular variety best represented tuberculosis to me, because people with tuberculosis, it's a lung disease, and they would actually cough up blood, and those patches of scarlet would be representative of the blood. But that's okay. They weren't able to get that variety, and I can add the scarlet stain. Yeah, I decided, since Oliver was a printer, I wanted to incorporate some type of either printing onto the painting or typography or something like that. And so I decided to use some stencils and create some raised lettering with a paste medium. And so what I did is I decided to incorporate the name of the painting, which is Breathe, which I feel like Oliver really helped people do, not only breathe physically, the people who had tuberculosis, but breathe emotionally and spiritually. And so that's why I came up with the name. And then there was kind of a, I don't know, I can't help but think it was a bit of a derogatory term, but there was a term for people who had chronic lung conditions, specifically tuberculosis, and they were called lungers. And so that's why I incorporated lunger at the bottom in with breathe, because those were the people that he was really inspired to work with. So I'm going to take just a little bit of modeling paste and start adding that onto the painting. And hopefully the result, you never really know, but hopefully the result will be that there's a very minimally observable bit of lettering on the painting that, you know, maybe you can see from a particular angle, but not necessarily that it stands out as breathe lunger, but just sort of gets incorporated into that painting as a part of it, because I'll be painting over the lettering. I've got the underpainting completed, where I've got my composition set out and to a place where I'm happy with it. But now it'll be time to really give it a little more life with some more translucent, transparent colors over the top of the underpainting. So hopefully this will come out the way I hope it does. Okay. Peonies themselves in the centers are very congested, very busy. And then as the petals go out, they become much smoother, more fluid and flowing. And I thought that that was also a good metaphor for the people who suffered from tuberculosis, that when Oliver was ministering to them, this was sort of where they were. They were in this congested area, not only in their lungs, but just in their lives as well, living in tent city and in an area that was very congested. But what they hoped for and what they longed for was to be able to breathe freely again. This particular variety, while it's a white peony, it has very deep little segments of sort of a scarlet or crimson red. That was a bit of a metaphor for people who had tuberculosis and would actually cough up blood. So I wanted to incorporate the red sort of down into these congested areas. And so part of being a painter is being able to add or subtract things as necessary. So I'm going to add in some bits of red, even though my particular subjects didn't have them. So I'm thinking that area, and maybe a little on the tips of this one. I kind of refer to Oliver Comstock as a Mother Teresa of Tucson. He really had a heart for the poor. He had a heart for people who were marginalized by their disease. The group that he ministered to in Tent City were really treated almost like lepers. It was a scary time, I think, for Tucson. Tuberculosis was a really contagious disease, and people who were healthy didn't want to be anywhere near people who had tuberculosis. Some people who came to Tucson were wealthy enough or had the means to get more professional help, to be able to be housed in sanitariums or in other boarding houses that actually sprung up all over Tucson to treat people with tuberculosis. And basically, I think the treatment back then was just fresh air, sunshine, and good food. And unfortunately, for the people who didn't have the money for that sort of thing, they ended up in a really unhealthy, unsanitary condition in Tent City, living with little sanitary water, with a few, toilet areas, that sort of thing. And it was really, sounded like it was a very unpleasant place to live. And so I was struck by Oliver Comstock's compassion. He had, it was a disease that was close to his heart, because apparently at least one of his daughters had tuberculosis, and that's why they came to Tucson. But he saw all these people really suffering in Tent City, some of which even committed suicide because they had no hope. And he provided a sense of hope for them. He ministered to them not only spiritually, but he ministered to them physically and emotionally. He provided clean water, he provided soup, other food items, clean bedding, all sorts of really practical items that they needed. And that just really struck me. It was kind of funny, I think. It probably took a couple days after I read his biography before I could really even talk about it to people without getting really emotional. I would have loved to have met him. What I hope people will get from this and find through my painting is the same thing that I want for myself, which is to just open my heart more to the people in our area, in our city, and the surrounding areas that need our love and compassion. And I think as Christians, as the body of Christ, that's what we're really called to do. We're called to love one another, and it's more difficult to love and show compassion as humans to people who are needier, people who are really down and out, people who maybe don't run in our circles, that we don't know personally on a day-to-day basis. And so it's my hope, and for the community, and it's my hope for myself, that Oliver Comstock will inspire us to be more compassionate and to show the love of Christ to the community in a much broader, much more visible way, and to go out of our way to do that, to be the the body of Christ, we're called to love one another. And my hope is that we will be inspired by Oliver Comstock and his really selfless acts of love and compassion, and be willing to step out of our comfort zones and do the same thing for our community.